This is Center Stage, putting your firm in the spotlight by highlighting business owners and other industry experts to help take your firm to the next level. Hey everyone, and welcome to Center Stage. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week we're talking about something that can really make or break the relationships that you have with your clients. Us here at Spotlight Branding, we're all about marketing, but you can have the best marketing in the world, but if your customer service sucks, then your marketing is all for naught. And so this week, I'm joined by Marlene Cosain from Abby Connect, and we're going to talk all about just some things that you can be doing to make sure that your firm's customer service is top notch. So Marlene, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having John.
So before we jump in, give us the quick introduction. Who are you? Who is Abby Connect? What do you guys have to offer?
Yeah, of course. So I've been with Abby Connect for about 8.5 years now. So throughout those years, I've kind of worn multiple different hats. I've had my hand in hiring, training, culture, and leading the receptionist department. And now currently I've kind of switched gears a bit, and now I'm focused more on culture and staff development as the Abby Way co-director. So Abby Connect is a virtual receptionist service. So we provide receptionist services for doctors, lawyers, different fields to really act as an extension of their business.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I've been here for about 7 years. I've worn all of the hats that we have here. So
you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not exactly like all of the other millennials who switch jobs every 2 years, but we've just done it within the same company.
Stayed in the same place. Yep.
Exactly. So awesome. So I think, broadly speaking, most people I think are going to agree that customer service is important. I don't know any of our listeners are going to be like, no, I don't care about customer service. I mean, yes, obviously it's going to be very important, but I mean, like, what are the basics? I mean, what should every firm be doing at a very bare minimum to ensure good customer service?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that kind of like what you were talking about, having good customer service is always talked about. It kind of sounds like a saturated topic even, but for as much as it's talked about, I actually think that companies still struggle to define and provide an exceptional customer experience. So one of the first steps I believe firms can do is to provide an intentional experience. So look at your experience and really look at how you're providing your customer service, because just because this is how you've always done things, that doesn't really mean that you're doing the best of things. So I always think it's healthy for every business to take a step back and evaluate what they're currently doing. So it starts from the very beginning. So is my website intuitive and is it easy to follow? How does the person answering my phone sound? Do they sound professional and cold? Do they sound happy to help? Do they sound like a stranger can trust them? Trust is really important. Or do they sound like they hate their job? Some people really do sound like that on the phones. And there's a lot. Do you have bilingual receptionist? What's the handoff process like? Do they trust just you or do they trust your staff too? So I really think that intentionality is a big key.
Yeah, I mean, and even if you as the firm owner are still answering the phones, and we'll get to that, issue here in a second, but just, I can't tell you how many times I've called a law firm or even just like any other small business, and I'll either just get law firm or I'll just get hello. Like, I want to make sure I know who I'm calling. Like obviously, like if you answer law firm, there are other law firms in your area. Like I want to make sure I'm calling the right one. Phone numbers can change. You just answering hello. I don't know if I've just called someone's personal phone by accident or if I've dialed the wrong number or anything like that. And so it's off-putting right from the start. And so, just in that example alone, I think if you're doing that, you're already digging yourself a hole.
Yeah, and that's that first impression that we're talking about. I actually had this happen to me a few months ago. I got a traffic ticket, which I know wasn't my proudest moment. But I was actually shocked to kind of experience how long it took me to find an attorney that I actually felt comfortable with. And it really left me wondering, what's that best customer service experience that these firms can provide? Is it that, or have they just not put much thought into what they're doing? So I'm in Las Vegas. So marketing is huge here. It's big, it's flashy. That's what we're known for. Kind of like the billboards that you envision on TV when you think of Vegas. And when I called, the first attorney, I had the most disappointing experience. The phone rang and rang until I got voicemail, and I hung up as soon as I heard the voicemail.
Yeah.
And really, there's two reasons. One was very unimpressed that there was no one there to take my call. I feel like customers nowadays, we want something and we want it instantly. We want to talk to someone,
Yeah.
and it's an automatic deal breaker. I have no loyalty to you. I have no loyalty to your company. I don't know who you are. I don't owe you anything. So there really is no reason for me to leave you a voicemail when there isn't even someone there to greet me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's almost, I talked about marketing kind of at the beginning. I mean, your customer service can also be an extension of your marketing. I mean, especially, in your case, especially, you had this issue come up, you kind of are doing your initial research. All right. You're finding these people, however you found them, whether it was through referral, maybe you did a search for them. And now you're trying to interact with them. But if you're not able to get in touch with them, or that first interaction doesn't line up with kind of the marketing that you saw, or just doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth, you're going to go elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, it's what first impression are you setting? I've been a virtual receptionist myself in the past. It was for, I want to say, 5+ years. And one of the most common frustrations I always heard on the phone was that people hadn't heard back from their attorneys. And of course, you and I know things take time, updates can take time, but the caller doesn't know that. So to me, if I'm a potential new client and it's that hard for me to talk to you when I'm trying to give you my money, how am I going to feel once you actually have my money? Are you going to go completely MIA and I'm not going to hear from you again? It's something as simple as that makes me question, should I really go with this company or not?
Yeah, and you kind of said a little bit before, just our generation and as the younger generations come along, it's that instant gratification sort of culture. Like, we are very used to getting just about anything that we need in a very short amount of time. And then you couple that with, especially the legal industry, and other industries who have always been notoriously slow to adopt new technologies, automations, and things like that. You start running into some trouble. So, so we talked about the basics a little bit. One of the things, especially, that I've seen, and a big concern that a lot of firms have, is that they want to figure out how they can stand out from their competitors. And so in that customer service space, what are some things that firms can do to really go above and beyond and really make sure that they're standing out and giving a very unique experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the handoff process is super important, because when we see the billboards as a consumer, we're signing up for the attorney that we see or the commercial that we see, but really who we're talking to is the receptionist, it's the paralegal. So how intentional are you about the people that you're hiring and on selling me as the consumer on your staff? I think that's super important. And really taking a look at the person answering your phones, and from a scale of 1 to 10, what experience are they providing? How's their tone of voice? How likely is it for someone to trust them? Do they confirm information? Can they provide information and accurate information? So I think there's a lot of things that attorneys can do to make sure that they're not leaving money on the table anymore. Ran across a Vonage article the other day, and it was talking about how American businesses lose, I think it was like $62 billion on average, just because they can't provide a great customer experience.
Wow.
And I think that business owners can provide a great experience, but I believe the issue that they're struggling with is that they're so bogged down. They're trying to keep up because customers want you to be available and available at all times. And I get it, but at the same time, how can you constantly be available to everybody? How can your receptionist and paralegal be available all the time when they're dealing with other things? So I think a lot of it's delegating also.
Yeah, I agree. And so, and God, I've been preaching delegation for so long now, and there's so many different ways that you could do it. Obviously, outsourcing, a receptionist is one of those things. So let's kind of talk about that for a second here. So I think solo practitioner, I don't think you should still be answering your own phones. You've got a lot of business that you've got to attend to, and being distracted by your phone ringing, however often that it does, is not helping you. So, I know I kind of know where you're probably going to go with this recommendation, but at what point does it make sense for a true solo to outsource versus potentially looking at a full-time front desk person?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love how you were talking about the solopreneur, really, because sometimes it is the attorney that's answering their phones. And
Yep.
if that's them, then I think honesty comes into play. How's that going? Are you
Yeah.
in a rush when you're answering the call? Do you have to constantly stop what you're doing and interrupt your focus time to answer that call? And I think it's really asking yourself, am I really the best person to be answering the phones? Is this the one thing that I can do and only I can do? And I think the
Yeah.
answer is going to be no. And
Right.
I really like this question because I think that's a common misconception, is kind of that idea that a virtual receptionist will replace your staff, will replace your receptionist or your paralegal, or take their job, if you will. And I totally get that. It's a valid concern, but the
Yeah.
short answer is no. We're not saying get rid of your receptionist or paralegal. Our goal here is to elevate your staff and free up some of their time, and to free up the
Yeah.
solopreneurs' time too. So imagine what else a paralegal could be doing if they didn't have to constantly stop what they were doing to answer calls. And I actually have a funny story. I had called
Yeah.
someone, I think it was a few months ago, to follow up on offering our free trial. And I was trying to get in touch with the attorney, and I think it was the receptionist, maybe a paralegal, answered. And I told her what I was calling about. She sounded great. And she laughed and said, "No, thanks. That's kind of why they have me." And she hung up. And
Oh,
yeah, and I really wish I could have just had this conversation about abundance versus scarcity mindset. I think
yeah.
oftentimes we can hold on to every single task and responsibility because we think, or we're scared that if we let something go, that will be seen as less valuable to the company. But in reality, paralegals and receptionists don't have to carry all of that weight on their shoulders. I really wanted to ask her, like, what do you wish you could be doing right now that you can't because you have this other responsibility? What do you wish you could be learning right now from your attorneys or from your paralegals right now, but you can't because you're answering the phone? So I think the
Yeah.
attorneys also have a lot of things that they can delegate, that they want to delegate, but then they can't because there's already this really big responsibility, because answering the phone is a big responsibility. That's the reputation of your business.
Yeah. And especially talk about customer service, you got people coming in through the door to the physical office.
Yeah.
If your front desk person is also having to answer phones, or they're kind of torn between people coming in and giving them the attention they deserve versus making sure the phones get answered in a timely manner, because it also doesn't do a whole lot of good if they answer the phone quickly but all they're doing is like, "Hey, can you please hold?" and then they're
Mhm.
on, and then that person's on hold for several minutes at a time.
Right, that doesn't create a great experience either, that first impression. And I think, as far as does it make sense to outsource your phone answering, I might be biased, but I think the answer is absolutely. What
Yeah.
happens when your receptionist is sick? They have to take time off, they go to lunch, who's answering your phones? Or what happens when they're in the middle of something important and they have to stop to answer that call, or they do let it go to voicemail because they can't, because they have someone in front of them, for example. Even as simple as what happens when 5 p.m. rolls around, or the weekends, or the
Mhm.
holidays. What plans do you have in place for that?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and talk about ways you can stand out, being able to say that someone is available 24/7 is
Mhm.
a huge boost, and a huge advantage that maybe some other firms aren't going to be offering. And when we talk about, um, bringing someone in-house, and let's say someone just wants to have an in-house receptionist,
Yeah.
what kinds of qualities would they need to look for in making that kind of hire?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, it should align with your core values. We at Abby Connect really believe in having core values and aligning the people that you hire with your core values. So for us, one of
Yeah.
our core values is excellence, and someone that has integrity and has a growth mindset. Those are just an example of three of our core values.
Yeah.
So I myself oversee the hiring process, and it's really important for us to have someone that can kind of just jump in and has that mentality that they want to learn, they want to grow. They're not scared of the phones, they're not scared of answering for a company that maybe they're for a field that maybe they're not that experienced in just yet.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have people in your office that can speak the lingo. I think that's super
Yeah.
important. If
Yeah.
it's someone on the phone's throwing questions at you or throwing terms at you and they don't know what certain terms mean, then that kind of also doesn't give the first impression that your company knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so much more than someone who just sounds good and sounds energetic,
yeah.
has that sort of extrovert, doesn't mind talking to people all the time. Like they've got to be able to pick up on things and learn very quickly, and
Mhm.
really be more than just that. They have to be a gatekeeper in some
Yeah.
ways. I know some people kind of uh, turn their nose up at that term, but like it gatekeeper just in terms of having sort of a good frame of reference for everything that's going on at the firm, so that they don't have to constantly be like, oh, that's a good question, let me get back to you. They can
Absolutely.
kind of handle a lot of stuff up front, and get people to where they need to go.
Absolutely. That's why with our training, we try to empower our receptionist and have them go through extensive training and knowing that we're here. We're here to give you all the tools that we have on this company. We have FAQs, we have pricing, we can schedule consultations, we have intake forms. We're here to be knowledgeable in your business and really truly act as an extension of your business. So we don't have to call you for all those things. We don't have, it's kind of counterintuitive. You hire us so
Yeah.
so you don't have to answer calls anymore as much, or you don't have to be interrupted. Your receptionist then should be able to answer questions and schedule appointments, take down intake, things of that nature.
Yeah. And so, and one other kind of question, we've kind of hit on this a little bit, but I want to, kind of want to really drive the point home. We talk about potentially outsourcing the receptionist duties, but I mean, you know, also I think a lot of times attorneys upfront, especially the solopreneurs that we talked about, they know they need some sort of help up front. And I think a lot of times they just kind of default to that sort of front desk assistant type thing, and handling more administrative type things. But I think there's a good argument to be made that maybe your first hire is someone like a paralegal or someone who helps more with the casework. And it makes more sense to then outsource the admin stuff, the receptionist front desk stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it goes back to what's the thing that only you can do.
Yeah.
What It's all about delegation and it's all about being strategic about the people that you hire. Is the
Mhm.
paralegal the only person that can answer the phones, or can you outsource that? To me, it's as simple as that. When you're going to put
Yeah.
your resources and resources are limited, you really want to be strategic in where you're using those resources.
Yeah, and especially in just such a customer centric world that we live in right now. You made the point earlier, like who's going to be covering your phones if someone has to call in sick, or someone goes on lunch, or when 5 o'clock goes around, on the weekends and after hours and stuff. And so, you really talk about wanting to make a difference and really stand out. Maybe that is something then that you consider, and having more benefits like that of outsourcing versus hoping that someone's able to work 40 hours a week, and not potentially miss opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot that goes into customer service. Again, I feel like
Yeah.
we haven't really even tapped into what customer service really means and how to create a great customer experience. And
Yeah.
how much time does an attorney personally have to train a receptionist on customer service, on a true customer service experience? How much time do they have to hire a receptionist, the correct receptionist, if their receptionist doesn't work out? There's so many
Yeah.
things. How much personal time and resources do you have into keeping your employees happy? We know that if our employees happy, they're going to treat our customers with the same respect. So there's just a lot more that goes into than just hiring someone to answer your phones.
Yeah, and honestly, just like attorneys aren't really taught how to market their firms in law school, you're not taught how to manage a team either,
Yeah.
especially when it's a team doing things that you personally don't have much experience doing. So, I mean, and you mentioned, creating a good experience. I mean, let's dive into that a little bit. I mean, what does that look like? What are the different elements there of creating a good customer experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think listening skills are super important. I think sometimes we kind of just jump in and we want to answer questions, but really sometimes people, most of the time, aren't calling attorneys on the best of circumstances. So,
Yeah.
are you really listening to what they need? Or are we kind of just rushing them off the call and assuming that that is what they need? Oftentimes, as humans, we have so many layers to us that we say one thing, but we really mean something either different or to a different level. So I think that's important. Establishing a personal connection. Personal connections are super important to us. It's really important for us to be able to build a connection, to build trust with the person that's calling, and to make them feel like they're right at home, they're in the right hands, that we've got them covered. I think it's
Yeah.
important to reassure them, we're going to be here for you every step of the way. We're going to take that stress off of you. My attorneys are the best of the best. They've been at this for a really long time, and you're in great hands. So it's more than just,
Yeah.
may I have your name? May I have your
Right.
number? May I have what it's regarding? Okay, I'll pass that along. Which is truly what I hear oftentimes when I call, let's say, a medical office, a true answering service. That's kind of the experience I usually hear.
Yeah. And it's honestly not even just at the start of the relationship. I mean, I think it's also really important, excuse me, to go to make sure that you maintain that experience during and even after everything's wrapped up.
Yeah, absolutely. Communication is so key. Over communication, I'm learning, is way better than average communication, no communication. The more you're
Yeah.
communicating, the better.
Yeah. And you talk about wanting to stand out and really provide an experience that goes above and beyond. I think a big place where a lot of firms, legal, financial, all kinds of industries where a lot of them fall flat is like once the case is done or once that work is done, like it's just you go your separate ways. But
Right.
there's a huge opportunity, I think, for retention, for repeat business, for referrals. If you have some sort of system in place, whether it's marketing, some sort of outreach that your team does to continue that relationship, check in on people, continue educating and kind of building more rapport as time goes on for people who have already kind of gone through whether the case is resolved or whatever you were doing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be as simple as a card. It could be as
Mhm.
simple as a phone call. Like, hey, I
Yeah.
remembered this about your son. How's his baseball going? Like, it's those things that you see that you might think are super time consuming and maybe they're not even that important. But to me, whenever I receive that, it's like, wow, they really did listen. Wow, they really do care. I'm not just a number. I'm not just a transaction. I'm not just a dollar sign. And I think
Yeah.
more and more, as being millennials or the generation that we're in, we don't want to feel like a number. We want to feel a part of something. We want to feel cared for. We want to feel included. And
Yeah.
there's so many attorneys. We can take our business elsewhere if our needs aren't being met.
Yeah, for sure. It's and that's part of the culture as well. Is more and more people, especially that we saw during the pandemic, more and more people left kind of this quote unquote corporate world and kind of struck out on their own and wanted to build their own business. So you're going to have more of that, which means more competition, which means more of a need to stand out.
Absolutely.
I do have one more question, and this one's it fits in within this topic, but it's also just one that I had personally, and that's
Sure.
I see two different terms out there. I see answering service and then I see virtual receptionist service. Is there a difference between the two? And if so, kind of explain what that is.
Yeah, for sure. If I'm being honest, I think it's the difference between good and great. I think it's as
Okay.
simple as that. An answering service is very bare bones. They typically
Mm.
lack that personal touch and typically only answer very quick calls and maybe cold transfer the call to you. Kind of like
Okay.
I mentioned earlier when you're thinking about like your doctor's office after hours when you're calling in. May I have your
Yeah.
name? May I have your number? Okay, I'll have them give you a call back. And usually that interaction is very dry. There's not a lot of trust building. Now, a virtual receptionist service, they uphold your company's image and brand on each call as if the receptionist was right there in your office. So, your virtual receptionist usually answers calls, they screen the calls, they can transfer your calls in your desired customizable way. They typically can do more than just take a phone call. They can do new client intake, fill out web forms, schedule appointments, make outbound calls. So for us here at Abby, we're super proud to be very customizable. So
Mm.
we want to be able to help business owners in the way that they need us to help them. So they and their team can do what they do best, really. So I think that it's super important to hire the very best of the best receptionist and provide them with the tools necessary for them to really act as a true extension of your business.
Awesome. Well, then that's a really great segue to what I was going to ask next. Talk for a little bit just about the different ways that Happy helps people and how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more.
Yeah, great. So Abby Connect, we're a family-owned, customizable virtual receptionist service. So we're here to revolutionize the customer experience. That's our vision, and that's something that we truly live by. So for us, it's super important to have human connections. So you'll have your dedicated customer success manager that's focused on exceeding your expectations. So they're your point of contact. They're the ones that are going to customize your account the way that you need it. If you need a script or if you need things a certain way, they'll do that for you. They'll check in with you regularly to make sure that we're meeting and exceeding your expectations. So it's not kind of a just sign up and we're going to forget about you and hope that you're happy. We're constantly going to be checking in to making sure that we're revolutionizing that customer experience for you. And then on the receptionist side, you'll have a team of about 5 receptionists taking your calls. We do include bilingual receptionists as well. So they'll be able to deliver an exceptional customer experience over the phone. And we really believe in what we sell. We also offer a 14-day free trial. So if anybody gets in touch with us through abby.com, they can sign up for our 14-day free trial and really see what it's like to have a receptionist service.
Awesome. And I'll include that URL in the show notes. So yeah, definitely encourage everyone to go and check them out. We've met at a couple of different conferences and we really do like what you guys do. So that is going to be it. I do have one final question for you. It's the one question that we ask all of our guests here. And that is, if you had one final piece of advice to our listeners, what would it be?
Yeah, I think personal growth is super important. I know it's totally off topic and that's okay, but I think personal growth is super important. Being able to develop yourself, being able to be a constant lifelong learner. For us at Abby, it's super important. It's one of our core values to keep growing, to keep revolutionizing, and to keep challenging ourselves. What books can we listen to? What podcasts could we listen to? Who can we talk to? And again, what's that one thing that only we can do, and delegate the rest?
Exactly. Yeah. And that was kind of what I was going to add on to that. It's, personal development and continued learning is so important. But I think a key aspect of that is being able to understand where it's best to let something go and let, another expert handle something and delegate that to someone else so that you can focus on what you are exceptionally good at.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for us here this week. Thank you all for the continued feedback, all of the ratings and reviews. If you have not done so yet, please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you're consuming the show. And that's going to do it. We'll see you next week. Marlene, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/centerstage.